All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Head in the Clouds from us at Go Cloud Careers. My name is Chris Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Go Cloud Careers, and I'm joined by Alonzo Coleman, Chief Marketing Officer, and Mike Gibbs, our founder and CEO. And guess what? I need a hashtag cloud hired in the chat box. We got another cloud hired today. I am so excited. I did my happy dance. It wasn't very pretty, but it was what it was. Give us a hashtag cloud hired in the chat box. And not just any cloud hire. We got a cloud hired in Africa. We are so excited about that. So excited, so excited. Give us a hashtag cloud hired there in the chat box, and we will get started. So what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about the cloud engineer and the cloud architect. If you saw Mike's post earlier today, there is a lot of confusion about this role. And it's very important that you have a clear understanding of why you can't do both, why you can't prepare to be a cloud engineer if you want to be a cloud architect, and why you can't prepare to be a cloud architect if you want to be a cloud engineer. We're going to talk about the difference between the cloud engineer skills and the cloud architect skills. We're going to talk about the cloud architect roles and responsibilities and the cloud engineer roles and responsibilities. We're going to talk about what does a cloud architect do and what does a cloud engineer do. Essentially, we're going to have a battle royale of cloud architect versus cloud engineer. And I don't think there's going to be a clear winner, but I hope we'll have a clear understanding of the different roles and responsibilities for these two. So if you want to know how to become a cloud architect or how to become a cloud engineer, then you have to have a clear understanding of what those roles and responsibilities are and what those skills look like. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So keep giving me those hashtag cloud hires. I've only seen a few of them. I haven't seen enough. But Alonzo and Mike, what say you on this beautiful Tuesday?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really looking forward to being able to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff on understanding these roles so that everyone will get some clarity on what their roles are as cloud architects or cloud engineers, and understanding that you can't do both at the same time. You're on mute, Mike.
Mike, you are muted.
This is a topic that I love to discuss, the cloud architect versus the cloud engineer, because these are two wonderful roles. And it's not that a role is better than the other role, but they're so different. And what happens is people confuse the cloud engineer and the cloud architect. And they want to be an architect and they ultimately learn engineering and they go on an interview and they can't get hired because they have a skill for somebody else's job. Likewise, when I was younger, I didn't know what a cloud architect did or an enterprise architect or a network architect. And I was an engineer for about 6 months before I moved into architecture. And I thought the architects were lightweights. I was like, why are these people showing up in suits, earning all this money when they don't know half of how to build this stuff? And then I actually was an architect and I went, oh, this is what the architect actually focuses on. And then I also saw what engineers did. And it was still such a different role, but incredible, incredible roles. And I want you to get hired for the job you want. So we'll talk about that in much, much more depth. But the point is all of you can have any job you want. You know, we get somebody hired as a cloud architect almost every day with zero experience. You know, we're extra happy today because we get people hired all over the world. Africa is the most challenging market to get somebody a cloud architect job. And we do it periodically. Today, we got another one, and we're super excited about that. In the US, it's nothing to become a cloud architect with the right training and get hired. In the UK, it's easy. In Europe, it's easy. In India, it's easy. In Australia, it's easy. We get people hired in every country throughout the world. And with every new hire, we're excited. We had a new one on Friday, a new one on Thursday. I'm pretty sure we had another one on Wednesday last week. And, you know, today's the first day of the week, and we got a new one. And this one's in South Africa, but we're always excited.
Right. All right. So let me tell everybody about a few things. So we have a 2-for-1 Memorial Day special that we have extended. It is going to be available through the end of the week, through Friday. So if you enroll in our award-winning Cloud Architect Career Development Program, you will also get, at no additional cost, a enrollment in our Tech Interview Fundamentals program. That's $1,000 value. at no additional cost for those if you enroll with this 2-for-1 Memorial Day special. That includes everything that our award-winning Cloud Architect Career Development Program has, the over 500 hours worth of content, the 3 live classes for an entire year. 3 live classes a week for an entire year. I don't know how I left that for a week out, but it includes our AWS training, our Azure training, our hands-on labs configurations, our mental focus and emotional intelligence training, our business skills training, our soft skills training, all of the necessary parts and pieces to becoming the ultimate cloud architect available for you, and over 25 hours worth of interview and resume specific training and content for you with that Tech Interview Fundamentals program. So take advantage of that discount or that special while it's available. Oh, and there is a discount. There's a 10% discount on top of that too. So not only do you get free enrollment in the Tech Interview Fundamentals course, but you also get a 10% discount on top of that. Tyrone has shared that link there in the chat box for you. Also, next thing, this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have our How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar, or How to Become the Ultimate Cloud Architect webinar. We're a little confused on the name right now, but I like either one of them. We'll figure it out. We'll settle on one. But make sure you register for that. That's completely free to you. We'll present to you for 30 minutes and then take any and all of your questions about the cloud architect career and how we can help you reach your dreams of becoming the ultimate cloud architect. So make sure to register for that completely free webinar this Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. You can register for that. And if you're not able to commit to the 1 p.m. Eastern Time, go ahead and register, because you'll be sent the link to the recording afterwards, but only if you've registered to receive the link or to attend the webinar. So make sure to do those 2 things. All right, I am done with my spill. I'm done with my MC activities for a little bit. I'm going to hand it off over to Mike here so that Mike can start us off talking about what is a cloud architect versus a cloud engineer, and why are they different? What's going on here?
Sure. So I'll begin, and then we'll get into some examples, which I want to walk you through. A cloud architect is a consultant. It's no different than really a management consultant in a lot of ways, but with the exception of the addition of the tech. The whole point of a company hiring an architect is they're looking for someone to figure out all the things that are out there that they can do to improve their business performance. So as an architect, I have to think about their networking needs, their security needs, their business applications that are going on, how their customers access the system, the customer experience, how the people get the job done, the extranet partners like supply chain partners, for example, that all the organization needs to talk to. I need to think about new technologies such as artificial intelligence. How does that make that business more important? What new opportunities does that do for them? How does that make them more operationally efficient? Which people I no longer need with artificial intelligence versus which new people I have? And I've got to tie all those pieces together into a cohesive strategy to help my business be more successful, my client. It's the exact opposite of an evangelist. An evangelist says, I love serverless. Customer 1, you need serverless. Customer 2, you need serverless. Customer 3, you need serverless. Kind of like a hammer looking for a nail. Our job is we are trusted advisors, and we are hired to produce a solution to improve our customers' business performance. It could be on the cloud. It could be off the cloud. It could be multi-cloud. And actually, in 98% of cases in today's world, it's more than one cloud. You heard me. In 98% of cases, it's going to be more than one cloud. So there's going to be a lot of coordination involved in it. For example, I need security. I need security architects that I need to talk to. I need security devices. I can't use most of that cloud native security stuff. It's not good enough. So when it comes to security, I'm going to need to be managing stakeholders. I'll be calling Palo Alto Networks, Checkpoint, Fortinet, Cisco, SonicWall, and other big security providers, for example. I'm going to be putting them together and managing them. Now I need some new machine learning thing for my business. Well, AWS has this cool little SageMaker thing, which may be too cheap or too expensive. It may be good enough, not good enough. Google has this thing that's pretty good. Microsoft has this thing, or maybe I'm going to call NVIDIA and I'm going to buy a system from NVIDIA depending upon how big my needs are. If they're huge, I'm not going to stick it in the cloud. I'm going to call NVIDIA and get the equipment myself. Now the compute. Okay, do I have a Nutanix cloud running with or an OpenStyle cloud? How many major public cloud providers are using? Oh, wait, networking, and how does one thing affect another? And I'm going to walk through the entire system, or at least parts of the entire system, in a few minutes. But architecture is about designing the system. We must remain big picture, and I'm going to show you why that is in about a minute. But we must remain big picture because one thing in one part of the system affects another part of the system. Have ever you guys ever thrown a rock into a creek, a river, or a lake, or the ocean? And when you throw a rock, especially if you throw a big rock and you're really strong and you throw it hard and fast, you notice the rock hits the water. And you notice there's a wave around the rock and another wave around the rock and another wave around the rock. Now, you don't see it when you're sitting in the beach and you're seeing it. You see those ripples, but do those ripples affect the sand in the water and make the sand kick up so the water looks less clear? Does the rock hit a fish that's swimming underneath, or does the fish see the rock and get out of the way? Does the rock land on a crab or a lobster or something like that? The point is a lot of things happen when you throw a rock in the water. Many things. And architecture is about all those pieces and parts that are there. Now let's talk about engineering. I don't care whether it's cloud engineering, network engineering, software engineering. It's directly what's in front of you. Engineering is about building it. In the building architect world, we've got architects that design the building, and then we've got a construction crew that puts it together. They function as engineers. But we're in tech. We don't have construction crews. We have engineers. They are our construction crew. So the job of the engineer is to focus on that technology, to performance tune that technology, to make the technology work, to make sure there's no problems with the technology. They have to. We need engineers. Without them, we've got nothing. So architect focus on everything. Engineer focus on one element of technology and make that technology work and performance tune it. Now, to focus on that technology, you got to be zoomed in and focused. You got to see what's directly in front of you. I might have a system that has 10,000 routers in it. I can't configure a router without going directly to that router for the most part with an with via secure shell or the old days telnet. Or now we can push via an API, but I got to go directly to that device. But architecture is more of you make a change here. How does it reverberate through the system? So I want to show you the need to be big picture and why. Chris, can you show me a picture of the squirrel in my backyard? Okay, so I'd like you to look at this. This actually happened about 2 days ago. I thought it would be a good picture of architecture. To an outsider, you see this cute little squirrel. It's looking for nuts in my yard. And I'm zoomed into the squirrel. What do you see? You see the cute squirrel. Squirrel looks like it's having a good time, right? Grass looks pretty green, right? My landscaper's doing a good job. Not sure about that tree, how healthy it is, but you see the tree. This is engineering. Now imagine if you were a veterinary nurse. You'd have to focus on that squirrel. No different than a software engineer that has to focus on the code around them. But enter in the chat box. Does everything look good to you guys? Right now you're zoomed in, you see the engineering picture. If you think this looks good, enter good in the chat box because there's a reason I want you to see this. When I see
I will say that squirrels are my sworn enemy. I have to say this. I have to share this story, and my wife and many others will vouch and back this up. When we lived in Mississippi, we have squirrels just like everywhere, and there was a family of squirrels that hung out in the pine tree above our house and on my roof, and they would always throw stuff at me. And by stuff, I mean nubbed off pine cones that they've chewed the things down, and it's all the way down to the nub. They would throw nubbed off pine cones at me as I'm walking to my car out of the house in the morning. So I would not say good. on this. Just
Okay,
because
so
I
so
don't.
Chris is not a lover of squirrels. But if
So
you're an engineer, let's say you're a veterinary surgeon and you got to work on that squirrel's foot, you got to be zoomed in. You got to look at that squirrel.
yeah.
Architects cannot be zoomed in. The second we touch the technology, there's a problem because we're now focused on the technology. Now, Chris, can you actually zoom out so people can see what actually is going on? Okay, here's what's really going on. You can see my cat Cindy over there. She's real cute, and she's 100% focused on that squirrel. See, as the architect, I have to focus on the entire system. Now there's danger, but the second we zoom into that squirrel, you can't see the danger. When it comes to architecture, everything is big picture. Now, if I were to focus on that squirrel and file the squirrel's nail down or get close to it and feed it some squirrel food, I might not see the cat. And as an architect, you can't touch the technology because the second you do, you can't see what's going on around you. You can't see the workflow of the employees. You can't be focusing on the organization's business needs. You can't see anything that happens at all. So, architecture, big picture. Big picture, the architect sees danger. Zoomed in, we could be focused on the squirrel's heart, for example, if we were a squirrel cardiologist, for example. Or if we were a squirrel ophthalmologist, we'd be focused on the squirrel's eyes. We really wouldn't see anything. And that's why in medicine, we have actual architects in medicine. They're called family doctors or internal medicine doctors. And you know what they focus on? The whole person. And you know what the internal medicine doctor or your family doctor does when somebody breaks an arm? Go see the orthopedic surgeon. You have arthritis, go see the rheumatologist. Wait, you got a problem with your foot? Go see the podiatrist. Hey, wait, you got a rash on your skin? Go see the dermatologist. Because the internal medicine doctor focuses on the big picture. They can't afford to get too close. And they send it out to experts. Architects, we are coordinating the care. We are coordinating all those things that are going on. So that's why they need to be different. So if the architect's focus is on the business piece, and we have to look at the customer journey, the underlying technology, the security risks that are going on, the things that are going on in the network, the data center, the compute, we can't get too deep on anything. Because the second we do, guess what? We're now focused on that squirrel's eyeball or that squirrel's paw. And we miss the fact that Cindy the cat is trying to eat that squirrel and will eat that squirrel. In business, guess what? There's always a cat running around. Every business has competitors, and they're like lions trying to feast on that business. And our job is to make that business more secure. If the business has lions, maybe we need a big fence, for example. Maybe we need to put stakes out there to distract the lions to go attack somebody else so we can leave. But the architect's purpose is, how do we tune that business? How do we optimize that business? And our tools are tech. That's the tool. But now, the second we focus on the tech, we lost the business. And thankfully, we've got these super smart cloud engineers that are focused on the tech. So Chris, if you take me to the next thing that I actually drew up, I want to show you how complicated this architecture piece is, so you really understand the whole big picture of what's going on. And from a systems perspective.
Yeah, but can me and Alonzo pick your brain for a second
Yeah, of
before
course,
we move
of
on to that?
course.
All right, because I want to pick your brain for a second. So, I love the example there. That's a great example. But so one of the questions that I had coming into this to make sure that we talk about, because you touched on it. Obviously, your entire discussion was about this, but let's talk specifically about this. What does the training look like? And can they be the same, or do they have to be different?
Oh, great question, Chris. They have to be completely different. If I'm an architect, I have to focus on everything. Now, how do I know what the business needs? See, an architect, I've got to optimize the business. So the first thing I need to know is how to get the right information.
Okay.
See, an engineer is going to have a build list that says build this. There is no build list for architecture. We've got to go get it ourselves. So the way a doctor has to ask a patient a lot of questions to be able to get to the heart of the matter, the architect has to do the same thing.
Okay.
Now, when a doctor asks the patient questions, believe me, those patients do not come forward with exactly the right answers. They babble about everything from their friend's Aunt Martha to the wart on their foot when they were 12 years old. And it's the doctor's job or the nurse practitioner's job to get that correct information. Now, for us, if we need to know what the business's goals are, who do we ask? We have to ask the executive team, ideally the CEO. Now, I promise you, if you ask a billionaire CEO questions about their business, their thinking is a whole lot different than the person who's configuring, who's writing a Python script. Because they got to write a business as opposed to focusing on code. So now for the architect, you need to do a couple things. You need something called CXO relevancy, which is learning what business executives care about. Because if you can't speak to them in their language, you don't have a lot. Watch. Alonzo, posi sa simera, isa daxi o goy me daxi, tita fas ya perlino simera. Look at him. Now I asked him how he was and what he ate for breakfast today. He can't answer me. I promise you, because he doesn't speak Greek. Now, if I went to a CEO and talked about sudo apt install HTTPD, he'd laugh at me and say, "Get out of here, Mike. What is HTTPD? What the heck is sudo mean?" Because it might as well be a different language. So I need to know how to communicate to a CEO, a CFO, a chief information officer, a chief technology officer, and I need to speak to them to things that they care about. I promise you, if I talk to Chris about how an ACE inhibitor works inside the kidneys to affect blood pressure, he'll fall asleep in about 30 seconds because he doesn't care about it. Now, if I talk to Chris about my new NVIDIA RTX 4090 and what that could actually do with regards to computations and data analysis, now Chris is going to say, "Get me one," because he's going to be excited and interested by it because Chris understands those things. So it's about speaking to the leader in the language of their choice. Now, an architect needs that. An engineer does not for their career. If they do, they earn more money. It's a good skill, but it's not part of engineering training. Now, while we're at it, how do I improve a customer's business if I don't know about business? So the architect pretty much needs all those MBA skills. Now, they don't need an MBA. Look, we got Daniel Bosu hired, and he didn't even graduate high school. But Daniel Bosu could talk about a balance sheet. He could talk about a financial statement. He could talk about a return on investment capital model because we taught him. And that's the key. You must have a knowledge about business because if our job is to improve business and you don't know business, you can't improve business. So that's our focus. Now, here's the thing. As an architect, we're not going to be touching the technology, but we are going to be managing or leading those that will. So we're going to need some leadership skills. Because as an architect, we're in a very precarious position. If Chris doesn't do his job, it's real easy. Chris works for me. I can do whatever I need to get Chris to do his job. Now, if Chris's wife doesn't work for me, but I needed his wife's special skill set, I'd have to convince Chris to beg to his wife to try and convince her to go work for me. And it could be done. Believe me, that's done with finesse. So now I'm an architect, and now I've got to go find 10 people to help me design an architecture, a big data person, an AI person, a security person, an identity and access management person, a network person. I got to build those teams of people that don't work for me and convince them to work for me until the project is done, the design is done. And then when it's done, I'm going to go help them with their design. So now I need some leadership skills. Now, we may have to do a proof of concept, but again, architects don't touch the technology. So now I got to go manage a team of engineers that are going to go do the proof of concept. So I need some management skills, light project management skills for that, not project manager skills, but a little bit of light project management skills, program management. Now I need to go do vendor management. Okay, so the AWS well-architected framework is kind of a joke. It tells you exactly how to design your system using only AWS stuff. You will never in your career work with a real customer that follows the AWS well-architected framework because they're going to be using technology from 50 or 100 different companies. When it comes to security, you're not going to be using AWS WAF. You're going to be using things from Palo Alto and Fortinet and Checkpoint and Cisco, for example. Now, you're going to need to do some machine learning. And if it's serious, you're going to need your own GPU-based systems. And what might cost you 50 grand in the data center one-time purchase might cost you $25,000 monthly in the cloud. And that's not going to work long-term. So you might need to coordinate with NVIDIA for that. Now, at the same time in your data center, you're going to be dealing with servers for your private clouds, right? And now you're going to be thinking of servers. Oh, wait, we're going to need networking gear to connect to the cloud, right? So now we got to talk to Juniper Networks and we got to talk to Cisco systems for this. Wait, now let's talk about our system. Should they run on Windows or Linux? Okay, well, this stuff is better on Windows. We better get some support from Microsoft. This stuff is going to be on Linux. Can we get away with freeware and support it ourselves like Ubuntu, or do we need managed support from somebody like Red Hat? More management of systems that are out there. Now we need business applications. We're going to need systems from Oracle, for example, for databases. We might need a supply chain application, an electronic health record. We might need voice systems from Cisco or Avaya, for example. And the architect's job is to talk to all these companies and potentially 100 other more, put all their stuff into the actual design and go sell it back to the customer. So now I need vendor management. Now, designing systems, which is how to put the pieces and parts together, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a bit, is very different than configuring systems. And I'll show you why that you can configure with a management console, the command line all day long, and you'll know nothing about system design. Absolutely nothing. Don't believe me? Okay, I'll give you an example right now. How many of you know how to use Google Chrome? If you know how to use Google Chrome, type "I know how to use Google Chrome" in the chat box. It's hands-on experience. I'm pretty sure every one of you has hands-on experience with Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, or Apple Safari. If you know how to use a web browser, tell me in the chat box that I can use a web browser. Bet you do. Bet all of you do.
My preference is Netscape Navigator, but you know.
I remember Netscape Navigator. I love
remember Netscape.
So all of you know how to use a web browser.
Even
Great,
Bing.
right? You think you know how the internet works?
Nope.
Well, you
I
enter www.cisco.com on your computer. And this is going to happen on a Windows computer. It's going to happen on a Linux computer. You're all been spending your whole life using web browsers. You're Googling stuff. You're looking at cat photos. You're looking at IT stuff. All of you using your web browser. Okay, now, so I type www.cisco.com. Now my computer says, how do I resolve that? And my computer says, got to do a DNS request, right? Wait, the DNS server, here's the IP address of it. Is that locally attached to my system? No. Okay, let me look on my routing table. I've got a default route that says go here. Now, in order to reach 8.8.8.8, which is Google's DNS servers, I now have to do an ARP who has the MAC address of 8.8.8.8. So now I have an ARP who has broadcast message out, and now my local router says, I'll proxy ARP it. I have the MAC address to 8.8.8.8. So now my packet is now sent as an Ethernet frame over to this router. Now, when it gets to that routing table, guess what happens? That router says, I have a route to 8.8.8, go out this interface. And of course, it's on an Ethernet thing, so it says ARP, who has the MAC address for this next router, and the next router answers with a proxy ARP. Now that packet gets to the next device, right? And it got to the next device, and the router looks at its routing table and says, here we go. Now we follow all that process to the DNS server. The DNS server sends a reply. Those packets get routed through the routers. Now, guess what? Now that we have the IP address, now we have to say, how do I reach the IP address of Cisco? And now guess what? We look in our routing table, we see we've got a default route. We go, who has the MAC address to Cisco? And that router responds. And then that message is sent to the next router. It looks up its routing table. It goes to the next router. It looks up its routing table. Poof! It hits a content delivery network, most likely Akamai. Now our packet is taken off of the public internet onto the Akamai network. And the Akamai network says, have I displayed the Cisco.com page to the user in Miami yet? No. Okay, now request it from the actual source. It now goes through the Akamai's network. Now it's cached. Now my message request finally goes through all these routers in the Akamai network. It hits the server. Now my system says SYN because it opens a TCP connection to the router, a TCP port 443. Now this device actually evaluates their certificate and it acknowledges my SYN. Then it's with an acknowledgement and ACK, and then it says a SYN. Now it reaches me, and then I send a SYN ACK. Now, okay, we've established a session between here. Now we've got to establish the flow control of the session. I send a single message. It sends me a single message. I acknowledge that I receive it. The web server sends me 2 messages. I acknowledge I receive it. It sends me 4. And this process is called the TCP sliding window. I could go off into this for about 4 hours straight without even scratching the surface of the web page, just going into the network. But the point is every one of you use the web browser, and unless you're a network engineer or a network architect, a network architect, not an engineer, you still wouldn't even know what happens from the network perspective. And we haven't even touched code. That's the thing. By being hands-on, you don't learn how the system works. You learn how to configure. And if you think people hire based on configuration, go find somebody that's doing construction, like a handyman or a construction worker, and ask him or her to design a 1,000-meter tall hotel with 5,000 rooms on it, 3 helipads, 2 golf courses, and 3 pools. They won't know how, because building, which is hands-on, does not teach design. That's why these are different. So that's the architecture piece that the architects need to learn. Now, what goes into that? Now, architects, we have to do a lot of writing, responding to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. We have to write thought leadership documentations, and now we need executive writing skills as an architect. Again, you don't need these as an engineer. Helps an engineer. But these are just some of these kinds of things that are going on. So now there's some of that. Now, as an architect, we have to present our systems. We present at conferences. We have to present our solution back to the customer. Okay. So now we need stellar presentation skills. Now, here's the thing, and I've been involved in tech forever. I've never met a customer, I wish I had, that said, Mike, I want to buy the most expensive technology because I think it's cool. I promise you, nobody does that. They say, show me how this technology is going to impact my business. So now I've got to build a business case for the customer, which means I must have business acumen skills. That's business acumen. And without it, I can't convince the customer they need it, and they don't buy it. And I've drawn beautiful PowerPoint pictures, and they go nowhere.
All right, Mike, I got to stop you here. I got lost. I'm still back here on Cisco.com.
Okay.
So, all right. So for people like me, what you were describing with that as Jay put in the chat box, follow the packet scenario that you just explained. Were you explaining the level of knowledge or technical competency that an engineer needs, or that an architect needs, or both? With that,
that's architecture.
Okay.
I only now a network engineer might need to know some of this, but look, a cloud architect has to focus on everything. And the architect needs to know this. And why do they need to know this? Because they're concerned about how the entire system works together. Now, the architect doesn't need to code because we don't touch the technology, but they need to know how it works, not how to build.
Okay, so that answers a question that I had as you were talking before you got to that example, I will call it. And because up until that example, you hadn't talked about tech. So I was going to ask, so do cloud architects need to learn tech?
They need to understand a lot of depth of the tech, but it's the exact opposite. See, in a certification, it's here's the service and here's how to configure it. but they don't teach you anything about how it works. We don't care about configuring because guess what? It's the same tech if it's Azure, AWS, Google, Nutanix, or OpenStack. It's the same tech with a different name. If we know how the tech works, we can design anywhere. But it's not about how to configure it. And I use that example to show most people that everybody's hands-on with a web browser all day, but almost nobody knows what goes on. The architect needs to know that why things are going on. Why do businesses use it? How does it work? The engineer needs to know how to build it. And here's the reality. I can give you the commands and you can build it and know absolutely nothing about how the technology works. You don't need to know anything about how it works to configure it. You need to know everything about how it works to design it.
JC just put a question in the chat box, and I'm trying to figure out how to answer this delicately without upsetting a lot of people. His question
I think I can answer it delicately. If you're AWS and your goal is to sell as much stuff to as many people as possible, do you want to train a business executive that can look and say, wait a second, you tried to tell me the cloud is cheaper, but this thing that costs $10,000 in the data center once is $300,000 on the cloud. That's not cheaper. Now, Jay, if you're teaching a certification and you say OpEx is better than CapEx, now no business would be crazy enough to believe that. A business would run a business case to determine, and they'd look at their weighted average cost of capital, for example. They would look at their free cash flow, and they would run a calculation of a rent versus buy decision. But that, by the way, Jay, would take me a month of training to teach you how to do that in our training program, just to run that analysis. Their goal is to get you loving AWS stuff, excited about AWS stuff, and only thinking about AWS stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if I teach you enterprise security, you know that you can't use AWS WAF because it's not adaptive in nature. It's not a next generation firewall. But if I don't teach you enterprise security, you don't know better, and you're done your certification, you think it's great. I saw a certification provider literally boasting that they taught their people how to design high availability on the AWS cloud with CloudFront. Here's the thing. You can't design high availability on a single cloud. It's a single point of failure. And nobody, including Amazon, would use a single content delivery network. They use three. They use Fastly.
At least three that we know of.
At least three that I know of. Three that I reach from my house. Fastly, Akamai, and CloudFront. And I promise you they're using more. Now, in their well-architected framework, they only talk about CloudFront, but they wouldn't even do it for themselves. So it's not that AWS is bad. They're an equipment vendor like anybody else, and it's in their best interest in certification to only flood you with AWS stuff. If you only know AWS stuff, you wouldn't possibly look at DynamoDB or Amazon Aurora and say, I can't use this in a multi-cloud environment.
Yeah.
They want you to use DynamoDB or Amazon Aurora because once you're on it, you're stuck.
You're stuck.
It's really, really hard.
For live.
I mean, it's like McDonald's talking about Ruth's Chris menu.
Yeah.
At Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. They're not going to do it. And they're not going to talk about prime beef and how you want. I mean, not even McDonald's isn't even going to ask you how you want your burger cooked.
Yeah.
They're just going to give you the burger. It's the same concept. That's why AWS isn't talking about these things or teaching things. There's nothing wrong with it. It's their business. That good for them. But it's our place as educators to
it's our place as educators to do it. And that's why before we started this company, and we'll go back to it, I interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people. At least 30% of them had the certified solution architect professional. Not a single one of them knew cloud architecture. Alonzo and I interviewed a working DevOps engineer. No concept of architecture. And this was a very smart person. It's just a different job. So, that's what we're talking about. It's that. Now, we talked a lot about the business things. Now, what goes into the architectural design? Knowledge of security, real security, knowledge of networking, Knowledge of data center technologies. They don't teach that, but if you don't know the data center, you don't know the cloud. And what does a cloud architect do? For the most part, they design the solution across multiple clouds. Or they take the stuff in the network and the data center and they move it to the cloud. Now, you want to tell me how you move stuff if you don't know what the stuff actually is? You don't. And that's why organizations were looking for people with experience. But the problem is they found that all the people they had experience didn't know how to design it and didn't know any of the business things. And that's why we're able to get people hired almost every day with no experience, because we're training them to be architects. So that's the architecture piece. It's the design. It's to present it back to the customer. It's to sell it back to the customer. It's the knowledge of how one thing going on, and we'll get to that after in a few minutes, affects other parts of the system. Now, there are architect skills. BGP is an architect skill. Knowledge of how to design your load balancer architecture. For example, when you need network load balancers and application load balancers stacked together is an architecture skill. Knowing how to design your demilitarized zones for security is an architect skill. Configuring a firewall is an engineering skill. So architects don't touch the technology. We're not allowed. And the reason we're not allowed is the second we do, we're focused on that little foot for that squirrel that we talked about, like a squirrel podiatrist would be focused on. And we're going to miss the fact that Cindy the cat is trying to eat that squirrel and she's building her plan.
Love it.
So now let's talk about cloud engineering skills, because the cloud engineer is a very important person in this world. The cloud engineer is the system builder. Now, the cloud engineer, not the architect, the cloud engineer will need to know how to configure these things because they're the system builder, which means that cloud engineer needs to know the command line, and they need to know it well, of at least 2 cloud providers. Now, that cloud engineer also needs to know infrastructure as code. So Terraform. CloudFormation is trash. It only works on AWS. Everybody's multi-cloud. You'd be crazy to use a proprietary thing. So the cloud engineer needs Terraform. Now that cloud engineer is going to be building systems, and where going to be the majority of the systems? Linux. So a cloud engineer, not an architect, needs to know how to install Linux, how to patch Linux, how to update a kernel in Linux, how to add whatever in Linux, how to install things in Linux. Now, a cloud engineer, not an architect, is going to have to automate things, right? So in Linux, that means they're going to need to know how to do some bash shell scripting. On Windows, it means they're going to need to know how to do some PowerShell scripting. And how else do cloud engineers automate things? They write code, right, with Python scripts. Mm-hmm. And Python does stuff. Maybe they're doing a little Node.js for identity and access management, which is, again, another cloud engineering skill. So the cloud architect is this big picture, sky-high business executive that knows technology. That cloud engineer is a hands-on technology professional. As I showed you, knowing how to configure the tech teaches you nothing about how the systems work. And it is no preparation ever for architects. And that's why we've got people that have been cloud engineers for 10 years, and we need to train them. Retrain them to be architects. And I'm going to tell you this. Working people are cloud engineers for 10 years. It doesn't make it any easier for them to be architects. Right. Now, it makes it easier that they know some of the technology. Great. But they're also, no matter what happens, whatever your old job is, it's part of your thinking.
Okay.
I used to practice medicine, okay? Everything to me goes medicine-wise. I'm literally not joking. It's part of my thinking. Now, the good news medicine is all about how one system affects the other system. I give someone a blood pressure pill, for example. The blood pressure pill changes an enzyme in their kidneys. Their kidneys then open up a blood vessel. As you open up a hose, there's less pressure in the hose. Therefore, there's lower blood pressure. So in medicine, I'm always thinking, I was trained to ask questions. In medicine, I was trained to think about how one part of the system affects another part of the system. You get a broken big toe, and that changes the way you walk, which changes the load on your foot, your ankles, your knees, your hips. And somebody's got a big toe problem. The next thing you realize they've got a herniated disc in their low back and they've got back pain. See, medicine is all about that. Medicine is about how do you take the person and build a plan to get them healthy. Architecture is all about designing a plan to improve the customer's business performance. Architecture and medicine are almost the same job.
Sounds good. Mike,
Man, you wouldn't know that Mike taught a class today the way he's on the roll here. I mean,
yeah, that is true. And you know what, Mike, I'm thinking about, you gave some really great examples. So how would you apply what the goal of an engineer is, or goal of engineering is, versus architecture? What are those differences?
So the way I like to think of it is, if I could use the doctor and nurse example, but let's consider them equal for right now. The doctor walks into the hospital, talks to the patient, asks some questions, does an exam, and writes a bunch of orders on the chart, which is the plan. The doctor leaves, and there's these magical people called nurses. They give the medications that the doctor started. They start an IV that the doctor said. They drew the labs that the doctor said, for example, in case the blood phlebotomy does it. They take the patients for x-rays and things. Doctor build the plan. Nurse carry out the plan. Same thing going on in tech. Cloud architect designing the entire blueprint for the organization. Cloud engineering team build it. So if I wanted to have a hotel done, and Chris knows a little bit more about hotels than I'll ever remember, but if I decided to build in Palm Beach, Florida, where I lived for many, many years, I live right outside there right now. If I decided I wanted a hotel, which had a bunch of golf courses and some beautiful pools, maybe an endless pool by the beautiful Atlantic Ocean there, because we got beautiful green water, and I wanted a golf course over there, and I wanted a steakhouse in there and a seafood restaurant, I'd hire an architect. The architect would ask me about my business goals, and I'd tell him what I want my beautiful hotel to look like, or her. They'd come back, and they'd have some blueprints for me. They might even have people build a model of it for me to look and show it to me. Now, once it's time to be built, architect's not going to be out there with a hammer, I promise you. They're off with their next customer, and the construction crew is going to come in and build it. So architects design, engineers build. Architects don't touch the tech. We're not allowed to touch the tech. It's a separate set of people. And here's how it's going to work in organizations. The architect is going to work with the account manager and potentially a sales engineer. We're going to go design it and sell it back, help negotiate the contract. So architects also need negotiation skills. And when it's done and it's sold, there's a new team of people, the implementation team. And the implementation team will build it. And here's the reality. The implementation team in many cases is going to be all over the world. If you deal with a consulting company which does this, the architecture teams typically live locally, meet with the clients. And then the coding and configuring is done by people all over the world. It's outsourced to the lowest cost places because it doesn't matter who writes your code.
Very true.
So, and I worked in consulting forever. Architecture is a consulting job. In fact, when I did management consulting where I designed business architectures, and I did enterprise architecture consulting where I designed technology architecture, it was the same job.
That sounds pretty cool. I like the way you differentiated those roles. But I'm thinking back as technology has evolved and adapted and changed according to the needs of what businesses are. What were the differences between architects of today versus the original architects of the past?
Now that's a good question. I've lived through every phase of architecture. In the old days, and by old days, I mean 1995 to 2000, when I started my architecture career. It used to be that there was no such thing as an architect. What you had was really good. The technology in those days really didn't work very well. Our computers may have had a megabyte of RAM, a 20 megahertz CPU or something like this. And getting the tech to work was ridiculous. You'd have routers, they would just crash for no reason. You'd have servers which would just crash for no reason. You'd have rooms filled with air conditioners for these ridiculous things. So in those days, the best techies were worth their weight in gold. And whether it would be a programmer that could make code work with 64K of RAM, and believe me, I know lots of programmers that made code work with 64K of RAM, not terabytes of RAM like in today's world, but there was that. The tech didn't work, and anybody who could figure out how to make the tech work was valuable. Then what ultimately happened was organizations said, these configuration people are good at configuring, but they don't necessarily know how to put the pieces and parts together. So what happened, and I was one of the original ones, they created a new kind of position called the design engineer. And this was a really senior engineer with great hands-on tech skills that was now pulled out to make sure we could design stuff. We were the first architects around 1995 to 2000. What was our focus? The tech. Now, here's the thing in those days. Alonzo, you remember him. Chris, you're a little young. In those days, businesses knew they needed tech, but they didn't even know what it was for. So basically, they'd buy the stuff, and then they'd hire other people to try and tell them how to use it. And at some point, businesses started to realize, hey, wait, this website we have, we can sell stuff on it. Oh my God, we can raise our money. This email thing saves us postage. It's really fast.
I can put annoying advertising somewhere on my website and annoy everybody.
Exactly.
And make money at the same time.
Exactly. And in these days, a 56K lease line between New York and Delhi, India was $5,000 a month. And we were literally talking about $4 a minute to call New York to London. And there were lots of businesses that had New York offices and London offices. So now it's like, okay, Mike, I need you to design voice over IP. And we'd have this, $2,000 link, and we'd be buying these $5,000 cards on each end. And for $12,000, now we could place phone calls free on our link. And imagine a business that could actually put 8 calls on that single link with compression and quality of service that used to be $4 a minute. So now for $32 a minute, we were saving $32 a minute on phone calls. For something that only cost $10,000. $32 a minute times 60 minutes was $1,800 a minute times $24 a day. You could see where companies were starting to say, woo, this is really good. Now they can sell stuff. They can communicate to their customers and sell stuff faster. They got a website to sell stuff. Now they're leveraging technology. And then they started to say, okay, now we need.
Wait, did we lose his audio?
It was still somebody that was 100% focused on the tech. What's that?
Okay, the latency is off.
Something happened.
Can you see me?
We can see you, but your voice isn't syncing.
Yeah.
Okay, Tyrone, pull me off the screen and put me back on the screen. Nope. Want me to log out and log back in?
Yeah.
Well, nice about streaming.
As we're sitting here talking about making phone calls across the Atlantic Ocean in the 1990s. Yeah, that's all right.
There we go. Maybe my ISP switched from one of my 3 ISPs.
No.
Yeah.
No?
You're still having trouble. You still have a delay.
Yeah. Video, but yeah. Voice.
Let me change my bit rate real quick.
Okay.
Output, let me change my bit rate.
Nope.
How about now?
Nope.
I'll log out and log back one more time, and then we're just going to have to work with it.
All right.
Actually, no. If it doesn't work, I'll come from my other.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see if this works here in just a second. If it doesn't work, we'll have him switch rooms, and Alonzo and I can entertain you for a little bit while we're switching rooms. Nope.
How's that? Am I back now?
Nope.
Okay. I'm going to switch rooms. That's why I always have multiple systems. One is none and 2 is 1.
All right. We'll see you when you get back.
Go to commercial or Alonzo or whatever. I'll be there in 90 seconds.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right. So looks like it's just me since Alonzo decided to bail on me there. All right. So there's a question that I wanted to get to here. Let me see. Let me scroll back here and find this question. All right. So I'm going to start answering this question, and when Mike gets back, I'll have him follow up on it. So we got a question here. Thank you, Mike, for creating a platform like this and always advising us based on the trend of technology. I live in Africa, and I have an interest in cloud networking. Let me get the next one. Then I read your article today on LinkedIn. Artificial intelligence is the next major disruptive technology. Based on your advice and how technology is rapidly evolving, should I study for the cloud network engineer or network architect? My focus is on how technology will affect these two job roles so I can make better decisions. Oh, hey, there's Mike.
I'm back. Is that better now?
You are back, and
Yeah.
it is better. All
More
right.
than-
We wonder why I have two 8K studio grade cameras streaming across two specific workstations in my house with 3 internet service providers.
All right. Do you remember where you were before I interrupted you?
Um,
I don't. So actually, I do. And I started to go to the question that I was going to put up because you were talking about this. We were talking about the architect of the past, the architect of the present.
okay, right. So
and you were in the London we just got through with the $32 a minute thing. Yeah.
So I was talking about the technical architect role.
Yep.
Which the technical architect role was kind of a hybrid between an engineer and an architect. And the technical architect is basically from 2000 to 2005. And of course, I had that role too. And what did that role do? We focused on the technology and making it work. And we applied the technology to business problems. But we were kind of like those early chief information officers where we were really just techies. And we focused on pure design. The network architect would focus on designing the network. The technical architect. The technical architect, if they were an application architect, would focus on the design of the applications. Not building them, but they were pretty techy. And some of the technical architects might occasionally touch the technology. So first we had engineers, then we had design engineers, and then we had technical architects. Now at this point, we're about 2005, and businesses started to say, whoa, this technology thing is a huge competitive advantage. We need to invest in this technology, and we need it bad. That was the formation of the solutions architect and the enterprise architect. And there were some subtle differences between the two. The solutions architect, and I had the role too, was I was working at Cisco, and I would consult with clients on how to improve their business performance with Cisco technology. Why? Because the solutions architect only focuses on the single vendor's technology. Now, sure, when I was at Cisco, I'd still have to deal with other third-party providers, but my job was to design, present, and sell Cisco gear. What does an AWS solutions architect do? They need all that business acumen we talked about, but their focus is on AWS technologies. And the solutions architect is still a big role. Every company hires them. Microsoft hires them to design, present, and sell Microsoft technologies. And it's the same executive skills we talked about. The CXO relevance, the sales skills, the executive presence, communication skills, leadership skills, emotional intelligence, all that. Solutions architects don't touch the technology as a rule for these companies. They design, present, and sell it. And then above that, and the same, the solutions architect and the cloud architect is really the same. Here's the difference. The solution architect says, here, I'll give you your AWS stuff, and that's it. The cloud architect says, here, it's best for you to use half AWS and half Azure, and I can design that for you. So the cloud architect is a bigger, more sophisticated role over the solution architect role, and that's why it typically pays more, and that's why there's a lot more opportunities. Because if I want to work for JP Morgan Chase, they don't need an AWS architect, they need a cloud architect. If I want to work for Goldman Sachs, they need a cloud architect. If I want to go work for Verizon, they need a cloud architect. If I want to work for Comcast, they need a cloud architect. If I want to work for Best Buy, the retailer, they need a cloud architect. Because they'd be crazy to put all their eggs in a single cloud provider. That's the cloud architect. So first, techie engineers called design engineers. Then technical architects focused on the tech. Then the solution architect, cloud architect roles. And this is really a business executive who also is an expert at designing technology to make sure the systems will work as designed. Now, the last kind of architect is an enterprise architect, and all of our cloud architects are effectively trained. The one that we train are effectively trained with enterprise architect skills. And why I train all of our cloud architects with those enterprise architect skills is the following reason. They earn more. An enterprise architect is a director or VP level position. I don't train anybody that doesn't have director or VP level skills. Why? Because I don't just want people getting their $170,000 first job. I want them getting a $300,000 job a couple of years later. And we've got a lot of students that have a tech background where it's not their first job and they're getting $250,000 to $300,000+ a year as their first tech job because of our focus on all those business skills. Because I create the world's greatest architects with my team. I'm not interested in having somebody say I passed 50 certifications, but I'm unemployable. I want people to be awesome. So that's really where the architect role is. It's moved into these bigger business roles.
Yeah, and that as you were figuring out your tech, I had a question from the chat box that I wanted to follow up right after this. So they're multi-part here, so we're gonna go through them. So thank you, Mike, for creating a platform like this and always advising us based on the trend of technology. I live in Africa and have an interest in cloud networking.
Okay.
Based on your advice and how technology is rapidly evolving, I read your article today on LinkedIn, Artificial Intelligence is the next major disruptive technology. Based on your advice and how technology is rapidly evolving, should I study for the cloud network engineer or network architect? My focus is on how technology will affect these two job roles so I can make a better decision.
You know, if you were in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, or Europe, I would say study architecture, not engineering. I can see a time where we have a lot of network engineers working in Africa configuring the systems anywhere across the globe. Now, because if I really want you to think about it, if I'm a business, and in today's world, I'm going to hire a systems integrator, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, Capgemini, for example. The way it's going to work is Capgemini or Accenture is going to go meet with that client in New York City. That architect is going to go sell it in New York City. And when it comes time to building out the system, that architect's on with a new customer. And these companies are going to hire people in Africa and Pakistan and India to actually go doing the building. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind that like you could go either where you're at. I will tell you in Africa, it's probably going to be easier to get a network engineer job than it would be to get a network architect job. The question is, what's going to make you happier long term? Now, I'm going to tell you also, there's a difference between salaries between engineers and architects, and it's not a minor difference. It's a massive difference. The architects earn far more because of their impact on the business. But what's going to make you happy? If you like to configure routers and switches and firewalls, yeah, be a network engineer, and it's a great job. If you like to design systems to improve customers' business performance, then you like the architecture side. Now, I will tell you, we will always need network engineers because nothing works without the network. There is, however, a trend towards using things like SASE applications, such as Versa Networks, for example, or Aviatrix. And Nile Systems has it, network as a service. And basically, these are hosted systems that are managed by other people. And the reason they're doing that is the network engineers they hire are going to be lower cost than the people that I trained years ago that were building the systems. But there's still plenty of people that need private networks. So the key is, what do you like? If you like the designing, presenting, and selling and talking to people, architecture is a much better job. If you want to be glued behind a desk all day long and configuring commands on routers, it's different. As an architect, I might say, Alonzo, let's talk about your locations in Cape Town, South Africa, Lagos, Nigeria, London, UK, Brisbane, Australia, Hong Kong, New York, San Francisco, and let's talk about how we can connect them together. And what your workers do, what your workers' needs are, and how we can make your workers more productive. Now, too, if I'm a network engineer, I'm going to secure cell to a router in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm going to configure the router, config T. Maybe I'll put host name, Taku's router. And then I might go interface serial 0/0 and put an IP address on it, like IP ADDR 192.168, 255.255.255.252, no shut to open up the interface. I might put some networking commands like a routing protocol, like router OSPF1, network 192.168, 0.0, mask 0.0.0.0.3, area 1. So those are the kind of things. Do I want to be having those conversations about how to impact that business, or I want to be the guy typing those commands all day long?
It's a big difference.
You know, I kind of drew a picture of an ecosystem. Let's go to that, Chris, to try and explain the difference and why architecture is so different than engineering. Okay, here's a diagram that I drew. And it's like everything that I draw, which is boxes and squares. I don't have
There's no boxes and squares on here, Mike.
Well, I do circles here. Usually it's boxes and squares, but here it's circles. So in this particular case, I drew a bunch of things that the architect needs to think about. I'm an architect, I'm consulting. I am concerned about the organization's people, as well as the customers. I'm concerned about the organization's security. In today's world, artificial intelligence, let's face it, the CEO of a publicly traded company's job is to increase profitability, shareholder value. So AI is going to enable me as a CEO to remove some of the people from my organization. Like IBM just said today, they're replacing 8,000 people with AI. They're going to replace non-customer facing roles. Architect roles can't be replaced by AI, they're customer facing. But companies are already laying off people that have artificial intelligence do the job, and the AI revolution has just begun. And as an architect, I'm going to be thinking, can AI help this company make better business decisions? Can it remove some of the people that are there, for example? Can AI improve the customer experience? Can AI provide technical support to the customers? I'm going to be thinking about these things. I'm going to be thinking the business applications, whether they be databases, HR applications, finance applications. I'm going to be thinking about the networking, the data, the servers. And I want to really explain how this works. Let's say I make the security too tight, and I make everybody have a 64-character password. And I won't let them use a password manager because it's not secure enough. You know what's going to happen? I can tell you right now. People are going to have sticky notes sitting on their desk where they're going to be writing down their password so every time they can do it. If you implement security policies that are too tight, your users will find ways around it. So the people affect the security, right? I might flirt with the receptionist and tell her how nice her hair looks to get access to the system. That's called social engineering. I might try it. If I was in security, I would definitely do it. I might pretend to be IT to get access to somebody's systems. A person might want to work from home, and they might put a backdoor into the system, like a bastion host. That might get me hacked. So the people affect the security. Now I've got a user, Alonzo just became a misbehavior. And we're now on the network, and we've got a 10 gig network. And Alonzo thought it was really cool to stream a Shakira video for us all to see. I like Shakira, okay? So Alonzo decided he was going to test the network, and he's going to test his brand new video encoder. And he filled up the network with the Shakira video. While he's at it, I love Bob Marley, Ziggy Marley, Damian Marley, Skip Marley. I decided to start streaming videos.
Does everybody see what I have to put up with every day?
So now Alonzo and I are spewing off videos. And while we're spewing off videos, we just congested the network. And now the critical business application just got shut down because Alonzo and I filled the network. So
and
your
Chris
people
couldn't get any work done.
Yeah. And nobody can get any work done because Alonzo found a really cool Shakira video, and I found a really cool Ziggy Marley song called Beach in Hawaii that I love and decided to stream it. Now, while we're at it, Chris loves data, and he just installed this really cool app that does data. What Chris didn't know is that that app has to poke a hole in the firewall. So we poked a hole in the firewall to make that app work. And now we've got a new attack vector inside of our system. At the same time, we're now collecting data. Where are we storing our data? What are we doing with the data? So now I got some Apache Kafka coming in for my streaming data. I've got people writing mapping and reduction script from the big data department to take stuff from NoSQL databases and relational databases and data warehouses, who are then mining that data, sticking it in an object storage, who are now catalyzing that data. And now I got the NVIDIA team coming up with some AI systems to go mine that data. So now we're in a position to make actionable insights on that data, and it affects the system. Now, while we're at it, I need bigger servers, right? And now, are we using virtual machines? Are we using dedicated systems? Are they in the cloud, out of the cloud? Now all of a sudden, I need 10 million IOPS because I've got a really discontented thing. I can't do 10 million IOPS on the cloud, so now I've got to go get one of special RAID arrays for my servers in the data center. Now I got to connect that data center to the cloud. Oh, wait, we need enterprise-grade security. We can't really do as good as security on the cloud because the cloud's a shared network. So now on my cloud, I need to go to the marketplaces and buy marketplace firewalls. I might need to divide my enterprise into 1,000 different VPCs or virtual private clouds, and I tie them together with BGP to try and convince them. Because what happens in New York can affect somebody in Cape Town, South Africa. All that stuff is what I'm dealing with as an architect. And just like the cat and that squirrel example where I showed you before, where I'm now focused on the squirrel's foot because I'm a squirrel podiatrist, here I got to be big picture and focused on everything. So that's the key. If I was a squirrel, you see in that environment, you see the squirrel, but you can't see my cat Cindy thinking about how to make that squirrel dinner. You can't see it, but Cindy's thinking about it. Now, Cindy can't think of anything under right now other than the squirrel, I promise you. She's 100% laser focused on the squirrel. She doesn't know that when I saw this, I got upset, so I opened a can of tuna for her because I didn't want her to eat the squirrel. She's focused on the squirrel. And that's the thing, is you can only focus on one time. If the architect focuses on the business, the engineers must focus on the tech. So I hope I tried to explain to you what happens. Now, on the network side, we got somebody in Cape Town, South Africa. Tyrone's here. We love Tyrone. He's in Cape Town, South Africa. He now connects to an ISP via BGP. So it's the BGP pairing session. Now, he also configured IBGP across our network to carry those routes. Now the people in San Francisco are affected by what Tyrone did in Cape Town, South Africa. And as an architect, I need to think in my head, hey, that thing that Tyrone's going to do, is it going to affect my artificial intelligence? Yes. Will it affect the security by allowing more reachability into our system? It sure will. Will it affect my employees? It sure will. Will it affect my servers and their ability to connect to people? Yeah. Will it affect where my data is stored? Yes, just because somebody made one single change on the router. So architecture is like chess. You got to think 10 moves ahead, and you got to figure out what's going to go play out on the battlefield. So that's kind of one of the major differences that we're talking about. These things are just so different, engineering and architecture. And that's why if you want to be an architect, you need architect training. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm an architect. I wouldn't know how to do engineering because it's somebody else's job. I'd need training to be an engineer. Now, 25 years ago, when I was an engineer, I knew engineering training. That's how I became an engineer. And then when I wanted to become an architect, I got architect training because it was a different career. Then again, I used to be a nurse before I learned to practice medicine. And guess what? I had to go to special school to transition from taking care of a person to designing their plan. It's the same job. Great jobs. Both of them are great, but you got to find the one that's right for you.
So, I got a few follow-up questions to that. That was a great explanation of the big picture, like for the architect. So let's talk about these certifications, because everybody wants to ask about certifications. Everybody wants to get certifications. Everybody wants to train for certifications. Everybody's all about certifications. Why do most current, or if not all, current certifications have nothing to do with actual architecture, as you just laid out the role of an architect? What's going on?
Well, with one exception called the Cisco Certified Design Expert, and I'll talk about that in a minute, all certifications are related to proprietary vendor services and helping you want to use these proprietary services and configuring these services. But architects don't configure any services. And while we're at it, architects in most cases can't use these proprietary services. So for example, when I worked at Cisco as an architect, enterprise architect, Cisco had a routing protocol called EIGRP. Might as well have been DynamoDB. And here's the reason why. You had to use Cisco routers to use it. Now, I want you to think about this. There's a lot of routers in the world. Cisco maybe used to own 80% of the market. Juniper Networks makes great routers. They own about 15% of the market. Arista Networks makes some routers. Extreme Networks makes some routers. Palo Alto and Fortinet run routing protocols. The second we would use EIGRP, you couldn't use anybody else's routers in your system. Now, the only way you could do it was with something called route redistribution, which was translating from one routing protocol to another. I'll tell you what, if I speak to Alonzo in Greek and then he translates to you, Chris, in English, I promise you we're going to have some miscommunication.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's not going to work real well. So the point is, even when I was at Cisco as an enterprise architect and the customers would say to me, what kind of routing should I use? I would say standards-based routing like OSPF. Now, what do you think was in Cisco certifications? And I love Cisco. All about how awesome the proprietary routing protocols were. Why? Because once you used it, you couldn't get off of it. So when you take an AWS certification or an Azure certification or a Google certification, it's in their best interest to stick you on stuff that you can't use elsewhere, like a ECS, Elastic Compute Service, as a container management platform. Don't touch it. It's trash. Once you do, you're stuck. Now, if you put your Kubernetes service that your DevOps team can maintain, your engineering team, and you've got half of your cluster in AWS and half of it in Azure and half of it, or a third of it in AWS, Azure, and your Nutanix cloud, you can put your stuff anywhere. There's no problem. You're using a standard container strategy. If I use an Oracle database, for example, it may not be open standard, but I can put the Oracle database in Google, AWS, Azure, and we're good to go. If I use DynamoDB or Amazon Aurora, I'm handcuffed like a prisoner to Amazon. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So what these certifications are really doing are they're basically teaching you how to basically sell a vendor stuff and how to be locked into a vendor stuff. And that's why employers are at the point where they don't even want certifications. They don't care. If I ask 100 hiring managers, and believe me, I ask more than that, do you care about certifications? They say no. I care, can the person do the job? So I'm not opposed to getting certified at all. I'm more in favor of learning the technology because I've got people like Delroy Batt that we've gotten in cloud architect jobs that had no tech background whatsoever. Now he's working as a cloud security architect and he didn't have any certifications. He didn't need them. He was competent. We taught him how to build his brand. He went on an interview. He went on a lot of interviews. He got offers from 3 different companies because he was that good. He interviewed with like 4 companies and he got offers from 3 of them, and he got to pick the one which he wanted best. That's a piece of it. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that these certifications are not geared towards professional jobs. They're geared towards entry-level jobs. Help desk, for example, the A+ Net Plus from CompTIA, and that's a help desk certification. It's good for that. The AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional is an intro junior level exam to learn how to configure things on AWS. It's junior level. They don't go into any depth. They don't teach you how the certifications work. You can summarize that entire exam in a 500-page book. Compare that to the architecture certification from Cisco, the Cisco Certified Design Expert, which only focuses on the tech, not the business, by the way. That's 50 to 100,000 pages of reading compared to the AWS one. Now, the Cisco one only focuses on networking. Let's say it's 75,000 pages. The AWS one covers networking, data, security. I mean, databases. I mean, it's everything in it's nothing. So certifications are good for junior level jobs. But once you reach bigger jobs, it's not about your certifications. It's about your ability to impact your customer. It's about the ability to be trusted. It's about your ability to lead. It's about your ability to sell. It's about your ability to tune business. And, that's why when you start looking at the data, it's stark. Global Knowledge, if you believe them, and I don't believe them because it's their business to sell certifications, did some very interesting studies. And they found that certifications can bump up somebody's salary by $13,000. Sounds good, right? Now, if any of you want to do it, Google it. I promise you, please do so. The average salary of someone with business acumen on salary.com, and you'll see that it's $557,000 as of yesterday. Where do you want to invest your time? Here's the thing. Architecture cannot be taught in certification. It just can't. Certifications have nothing to do with architecture. Certifications have everything to do with how to configure a service. So I want you to think about how you spend your time. I can tell you one thing. In my youth, I wasted a lot of money on certifications and spent a lot of time. And then I had an executive coach, and she said to me, Mike, I think you should focus on your business acumen. I think you should focus on your executive presence. I think you should focus on your leadership skills. And I had a 6-figure raise within months. So, here's the thing. Where do you want to put it? This career, the cloud architect career, cannot be taught in a certification. And you can't learn it with cloud projects where you're configuring things, because that doesn't teach you architecture. It has to be taught by an educational organization that has expert architects that have been architects. And while we're at it, who do you get advice from? You get advice from people that have made it. So if I want to learn how to be a billionaire, I'm going to go to all of them. And they're all going to be a little eccentric because they're there. I'm going to reach out to Elon Musk. I'm going to reach out to John Chambers. I'm going to reach out to Andy Jassy. I'm going to reach out to, what do you call it? Not Steve Jobs. Apple. Tim Cook. I'm going to reach out to Steve Ballmer if he's still alive. I'm going to reach out to all the billionaires that have made it and say, how do I become rich? What I'm not going to do is reach out to somebody that's poor and say, how do I become rich? Because they don't know how. Now, what do most people do? They get advice from people they relate to, people that have no background, people that have no experience, because it's comfortable. People like those people that are like themselves. So the newbie tends to ask the other newbie, but the problem is the newbie doesn't know how to get there. Or the newbie asks a junior architect. Again, if the junior architect was successful, they wouldn't be a junior architect. They'd be a regular architect or a senior architect or a distinguished architect or principal architect. I was at that principal level in 2 years. That's when I started coaching people. When I was a principal architect, when I knew something because I already made it. Before that, people would ask me, I'm like, I'm just as new as you. I don't know. How can I help you with this? I've never made it myself. So always ask someone that's in a much better position than you. I have people that I ask questions for. They've been CEOs, CFOs of big organizations. I don't ask anybody that's junior to get information. When Chris and I speak to executives to find out what they want in an employee, a cloud architect, we speak to the chief information officer. We speak to their VPs. We speak to the VPs of HR, the directors of HR. We speak to the hiring managers themselves, the directors and VP levels only. We don't go lower than that. Why? Because they're the people that have made it. I ask the people that have made it. I speak to the CEOs of recruiting firms that have been recruiters for 25 years, not somebody that just got hired as a recruiter yesterday, or the person that got laid off from their position because they were ineffective in the position that's now posting on LinkedIn every day giving advice. I find the person that was so good that they've had a 25-year career where they've never been laid off. I just look for the best. And that's my recommendation for everyone. Find people that have made it.
All right. There's a question I want to get to here in the chat box from Alan. Alan asks, if wanting to work for AWS as a solution architect, is it beneficial to know AWS architecture or multi-cloud architecture in the employer's point of view?
You still have to know multi-cloud architecture. And here's the reason why. Even if you're a gull working for AWS, and I would strongly recommend you increase your reach beyond AWS.
Yes.
AWS is the lowest paying of all the employers in the cloud architect space. And there are other people that are growing much faster in the cloud space than AWS.
Yeah.
And outside of the cloud space, all the big banks need multi-cloud people. All the big retailers need multi-cloud people. So I would never limit myself to just knowing AWS. And here's the thing. If you're at AWS as a solution architect, your whole job is going to be to convince your people to get off of the other people onto AWS. And here's the thing. How do you convince other people that you've got a better solution if you don't know everybody else's solutions that's out there? So again, you'll still be ineffective if you don't know multi-cloud. There is no way in today's world to be effective or even be hireable if you only know a single cloud provider. And here's the good news, Alan. It's the same thing. There was a Who song, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. I used to love it. If you know virtualization and you know what a virtual machine is, if it's a VMware virtual machine, you get it. If it's a Citrix Zen virtual machine, you get it. If it's a Linux KVM or QEMU virtual machine, you get it. If it's an AWS EC2 instance, an Azure virtual machine, a Google Compute Engine instance, an Oracle virtual machine, guess what? It's the same thing. Same thing. Just a different name. Do you buy Bounty paper towels, the quicker picker upper? Who else makes paper towels? I don't know, Publix brand. I don't know. It's the same paper towel. So the key is you always need to know multi-cloud, but it's a great question. But if you work for AWS, they do want you to sell the AWS versions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, let's talk about it from the employer's point of view. Who's the hiring manager going to be impressed by? As somebody that is only somewhat knowledgeable about AWS stuff, or someone that can blow their socks off and talk about cloud computing as it truly is? They're gonna, and this is coming from feedback from our students that work at AWS.
We've got a lot of them.
The fact that they didn't spout just AWS information in their responses during the interview was the reason that they were successful in getting a job at AWS.
Exactly.
So that's very important there.
And even when it came to security, our students that get hired by AWS all the time didn't use the AWS security features. They used the next generation firewalls. In fact, on 2 separate occasions, we had students with AWS that when they presented the security part of the architecture, they said, all right, we don't need to hear any more of the presentation. We get it. You know much more about security than we do. Now let's talk about what you want in your career on that final presentation, because our students were so good.
And here's a good question from Igor, and I know that the answer is not a direct, a full-throated yes, but it shows the difference between the engineer and the architect. Should cloud architects learn accounting?
Well, you have to understand the difference between accounting and finance. Accounting is counting where the money goes. We have nothing to do with that. We have to do with teaching a business how to invest, which is finance. Do we need to know finance? Yes, absolutely. In our lead architect program, are we also teaching accounting? The answer is yes, because in our lead architect program, we're trying to get our people these $500,000 architect jobs. And with that, you need much more business acumen, but it's more finance that you need to know than accounting. To build the business case, it's finance. Accounting is like, okay, after the fact, here's where the money went. Finance is, if I invest in this, will this give me a greater rate of return than if I invest in this? So we're dealing with finance, building a business case, building an ROI model. That's finance, which is the exact opposite of accounting.
And to be clear, we're saying architects
Yes.
need to know this.
Yes, not engineers.
Not engineers.
Not engineers.
To give everyone an idea of the difference between the two roles, there's a perfect example of right there. The fact that as an architect, you need to be knowledgeable in finance and business cost, essentially, business finance and business expenditures and all of that stuff. The fact that you have to know that as an architect is a clear delineation between the architect and the engineer. So I thought that was a good question.
Great question.
And you talked about this earlier as you were answering some other questions. Thank you all for the clear breakdown. My question is, does the Cloud Architect program also prepare you for the solution or enterprise architect roles?
Well, here's the thing. A cloud architect is a solution architect that knows more clouds. So we have lots of our people getting solution architect jobs as their first job. The solution architect job is a more junior job than the cloud architect. And we've got lots of people getting hired by AWS, Azure, Google as solution architects. So the answer is yes. Is our role really preparing people for enterprise architect jobs? Yes and no. No, we've had many people like Wallace Agana get our enterprise architect job. We've got a really amazing enterprise architect in Angelo. We had a landscaper whose name was Jermaine, who we recently got an enterprise architect job for. So the answer is yes, we prepare you for all of these roles. Now, here's the reason I said no. It's easy to get a cloud architect or a solution architect job without experience if you're competent. An enterprise architect job, they typically want you to have a few years architect experience first, as say a solution architect or a cloud architect. And like people like Pritpal got an enterprise architect job from us because our training works for enterprise architecture, but it's nothing to get a solution architect or a cloud architect job with the right training, even without experience. But it's very challenging to get an enterprise architect job as a first job. We still do it periodically, but I don't want to make that promise for the enterprise architect job.
Yeah. It has happened, but that's not our overall focus.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. See, I told Juan to send me a message on Slack since he's in the program. I can give him a much more specific answer, but I thought this was a good question to talk in general terms. I was looking for an MBA and I realized it means Masters of Business Administration. So do I need to study something before I try to get one, like get a basic admin degree before?
Juan, you will need a college degree before you can actually get it, but it really doesn't matter what it's in. But there's caveats to that one. So if you want to do an MBA and you don't have the prerequisite business courses, they will typically make you do about 10 classes in the undergraduate before you're allowed to the MBA program. Now, if you take what's called an executive MBA program, which is what I would recommend for you, Juan, once you get your first cloud architect job, and the way the executive MBA programs, and I've done 2 MBAs. I did an executive MBA and I also did a regular MBA. I like school, okay? I just did. And I realized how important business acumen was. In the executive MBA program, you'll typically go 1 weekend per month. And you'll be working in a lot of projects and they're designed for working adults. And they don't really give you the basic courses. They just give you all what you need because they assume you've got some working experience to do so. And they count your working experience and just give you the MBA courses. So Juan, if I know you're in college right now, finish college, let your employer pay for your executive MBA. These things are expensive. And as a cloud architect, your employers will happily pay for your MBA program. Mine did. And that's what I would do. But what your undergraduate degree in, it doesn't matter. My undergraduate degrees are in healthcare. My first master's degree was in healthcare, and then business was what I loved.
Okay. I have a question, Mike. That's something that I was sticking in the back of my mind. I was wondering when it comes to the well-architected framework, why won't architects or can't architects use this type of framework? And what's the difference between a strategic advisor and a partner?
Okay, so a strategic advisor and actually a real partner are the same thing. But people throw the term partner around loosely. Sales reps learned that if they could improve their customer's business, they were partnering in their business and they could help them. So the sales reps started to realize we'd like to be your partner and we'd like to help you as a business partner grow your business. Now, the real sales reps, just like the real architects, would evaluate their customer's business. They would look at their business inputs and outputs, and they would see what they had that could help that customer. And if they had something that could work, they'd say, I've got a solution for you. And if they didn't say, they would say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. That's a strategic advisor, and that is a partner. What most sales reps would do would say, hey, I get paid a commission if I sell you stuff, and I get fired if I don't. Here, you got to go buy this widget. I got this widget. It's good for you. It's the best thing in the world. Now, what is the AWS well-architected framework? It is a sales framework for AWS. Here, these are all the security things we have. If you need security, use our security stuff. Here's our big data framework. Use ours. Trust me, it's good. Now, who do I think has better machine learning artificial intelligence tools? Google, who runs the largest search engine in the world and the second largest search engine in the world, and has done algorithms for the last million years. Microsoft, who spent $10 billion investing in ChatGPT, or Amazon. I'm not going to put my AI eggs in the Amazon basket. I'm going to use one of the big players because it's their strength. It's all they've done forever. I'm either going to develop my own thing with my team of data scientists that I'm going to hire, or I'm going to reach out to one of these other people. A strategic advisor like an architect would say, look, Microsoft's your number one AI player right now. Use them. AWS is some of the biggest infrastructure. Use them for that. And you can't do disaster recovery. Of course, in the AWS well-architected frameworks, they'll teach you to disaster recovery in their own cloud, which is like here. It's like if you put your money in a bank, here, put all your assets in the same bank. No, don't do that. Put it in a second bank in case a bank goes bankrupt. So maybe use Google there. So that strategic advisor is really going to be looking out for their customer and their best interest. Whereas by comparison, and that's that's why the well-architected framework. And here's another thing with ref and architectures. Here's how you design a bank. Here's how you design a hospital. Here's the problem with that. Two hospitals have different processes, different people, and different technology systems, and they each need different architectures. And the problem with the well-architected framework is how do I shove as much AWS stuff in there as possible? All the cloud providers have their frameworks, and it's all designed to use as much of their stuff as possible. And it makes it very easy for their sales reps to sell an all AWS solution. But who's got a better solution? AWS WAF. If you get hacked through it, you're going to get notified. You've been hacked. You've been hacked. You've been hacked. A Palo Alto firewall. Somebody attacks the firewall, for example. The firewall senses it's been hacked, and the firewall creates new rules and stops the attack. It's going to use artificial intelligence and dynamically stop the attack. It's going to use signatures and things. So if I'm going to secure my system, am I going to use a next generation firewall, or am I going to use this static AWS WAF that's the equivalent of a 20-year-old firewall? Yeah. I'm going to use the next generation firewall. It's not that WAF is bad.
It's not enough.
It's not going to be enough for my enterprise customers. Now, I got a website for my cat Cindy, right? I want to put it on the AWS cloud. Do I need to pay $1 an hour or $2 an hour for Palo Alto's firewall? No, I'm going to use AWS WAF. It's good enough. If somebody catches photos of Cindy trying to eat a squirrel, do I care? No, they're not going to hurt Cindy. It's not going to hurt me. So there's never a best technology in architecture. It's about the technology that supports your customer's business need. These well-architected frameworks try to treat everybody as if they're the same. Here, just use this stuff. And that's the worst thing you can do. That keeps you out of being a trusted advisor and puts you into like an evangelist mode, like a hammer, and all you want to do is a nail. Like my wife says, go to a hairdresser, and I promise you, even if you're bald, she'll give you a haircut. Or recommend a hair thing. You go to a dermatologist, and they've got something they can do. Either you got a rash on your skin, or they can inject you with a derm filler. So the key is, you got to be out there to really help your customer. You can't have any initiatives if you're really good at what you do as an architect.
That makes sense. Thanks a lot for that, Mike.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we got 5 questions here in the chat box that we still got to get to, and I am going to try and wrap these up in the next 15 minutes so that we can finish on time. So let's go with Brian's question first. Brian asked, how much does data governance play into the role of architects? For instance, do architects talk to VPs from each business unit in an organization?
So, Brian, architects will speak to VPs, they'll speak to CEOs, department heads, and everywhere in between. Data governance is one of the many 40 or 50 things that we typically do as architects. Now, as architects, are we going to be data governance experts? No. So we're going to go talk to data governance experts, and we're going to be coordinating them with regard of our team. And that's the thing. If we're this big picture person, and we got to cover artificial intelligence, security, identity and access management, and yes, that's different than security, networking, databases, big data, applications. There's no way that one person, unless they're a vampire and they're 3,000 years old, can become a master on all of these things. They need to coordinate a team, and that's the key.
All right. From Monique, if you're positioning your personal brand as an architect, should you remove fundamental cloud certifications from your profile resume?
Absolutely. When I see a resume with a CompTIA certification, or somebody wants to tell me how many certifications they have, I throw it away immediately. Now, I would keep the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional on a resume. I would keep the Azure Solution Architect Expert on a resume. I would keep the Cisco Certified Internet Expert. But if somebody's got a cloud developer and they want to be an architect, take it off. We're not developers. If somebody's got a cloud practitioner and they've got a Certified Solution Architect Professional, take the associate off and take the practitioner off. If somebody has a SysOps thing on their resume, it's going to tell me as a hiring manager, do not hire. SysOps is maintenance, and I don't want a maintenance person to be an architect. I want a business executive. So remove that. Monique, everything you have on your resume says a lot about you. If your doctor shows up in a lab coat, you're going to think you're going to trust them as a doctor. If your doctor went to Harvard and you don't know, but they put on a clown uniform with an orange-red clown nose on it and big cloggy clown shoes, until proven otherwise, you're going to see them as a clown, not a Harvard-trained physician. So yes, when you want a senior role, get rid of all that junior level stuff. It doesn't belong on your resume. Great question.
All right. Mr. K says, what kind of training specialty or niche will it take to get an entry-level position that starts at $200,000?
Our training. Our training we typically get here all the time. Now, I will say that 150 to 170 is about average what we're seeing for our first-time graduates. We also have some people getting $300,000 jobs too, but they typically have experience. But about 170 with our 150 to 170 is nothing out of our training, and we get it every single day, people with these jobs. Our cloud architect career development will easily get you there. And we have our elite architect program for the following reasons. Give someone the skills to get that first $150,000 to $250,000 job 2 or 3 years down the line. They've got all the business acumen and executive acumen. And here's what we do in that. We have business schools professors from an MBA program coming in. We have VPs from tech companies and other executives at tech companies coming in and teach that. And we teach all those things that are necessary from an MBA program. And Mr. K, all the things that are not part of an MBA program. Like after my MBA, for example, I had a roughly $100,000 training in CXO relevancy and scales and emotional intelligence. And that training is also in that program, in our Elite Architect program, which coincidentally is less than 2 weeks pay for the average architect for our Elite Architect program. But in order to get a $200,000 job, you could easily do that in our Cloud Architect Career Development program. And we get those results every day.
All right. Follow up to an earlier question. Thank you for your response, Mike. In addition, you did mention that architecture roles are more consulting roles. Do companies hire full-time, or would it mostly be working contracts?
These jobs are, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were finished. So, Chiama, these jobs are almost exclusively full-time jobs. The architect is too strategic of a position. You can't have them bouncing in and out of the company. They're not contract jobs. Is it stable? Incredibly. It is much more stable than engineering jobs because engineering jobs, if there's a bad economy, get laid off. Architect jobs bring money into the business and they're customer facing, so they're hardest to replace. So for example, I spent 10 years in a single role as an architect. I could have spent my 25, 30 years in an architect role, but I retired. And I architected people's careers instead of architecting business performance systems. And I got to tell you, every day somebody gets hired, I love it. Now, I used to have a really cool happy dance, but I had a foot injury training in Israel in martial arts. So my happy dance is with not so pretty these days. But I got a happy dance. Chris has got a happy dance. Alonzo's got a happy dance. And almost every day we get somebody hired. It's the best job in the world, the architect job. At least in my experience. And I've been an architect for 25 years now. And I've done other careers like practice medicine too. I love this better than anything.
All right, from Mohammed. I'm a back-end developer and I love studying cloud architecture. Can I do both?
No.
Or will that be a big hustle and it's better to shift my whole career and be only a cloud architect?
Shift it. Mohammed,
First shifted. Chris, could you bring back these two photos of Cindy?
Yep. Give me a second.
Okay, see the little squirrel here? As a developer, you're basically focusing on, say, the squirrel's feet. Like, let's say you had to polish the toenails on the squirrel, or you were a podiatrist that were worried about the squirrel's feet. You have to be zoomed in the code. Zoomed in. Now, when you're zoomed in on the squirrel's feet, what are you going to see the squirrel's feet? What you can't see, go back to what's really going on, Chris, in that big picture. You can't see that the photo of the squirrel, you're no longer seeing the squirrel's foot. You're seeing the cat that wants to eat that squirrel. That cat is my cat, Cindy. She's beautiful, and she loves to chase everything down, but here's the key. You can't be an engineer and an architect at once. The second you do, you will lose focus on the big thing. Now, I don't know why you'd want to be a developer and an architect at the same time. An architect is a big job. It is a big strategic job. And a developer in today's world is going to be replaced by AI. Just today, NVIDIA's CEO said it, and they're 100% right. We warned people to get out of software development positions a year ago. And he said, with AI, everybody's a developer. You don't need to know how to write code. You can just talk to the tech, and it can write code. So developers are getting laid off. IBM just announced the layoff of back-end people, all non-customer-facing roles. And here's another reason. Some people are motivated by money. A developer is a $150,000 job with 10 years experience. And here's what Google pays a principal architect. Now, I was a principal architect with 2 years experience. It pays about $300,000 more than you would ever earn as a developer. So do you want to be a bad architect and a bad developer trying to do two people's jobs at the same time? Or do you want to be an awesome architect? Now, if you love being a software developer and you don't want to be an architect, stay a software developer. But build your business acumen, your leadership skills, your sales skills, your communication skills, your emotional intelligence. So when 90% of the software developers get fired and laid off when AI replaces them, you'll be one of the people that are stuck left behind, that are writing the code that the AI can't, programming the AI systems that the world's going to love. You'll be in a better position. I love developers. I love engineers and architects, but the engineer of the past is dead with AI.
All right, so we'll do this question and then we will wrap it up. From Relaxed Guy, I like that name.
Yeah.
Do I need a degree to land an architect position?
No. Relaxed Guy, my team will pop a video of Daniel Bosa. I've gotten a lot of people hired without degrees. Why do I mention Daniel Bosa? Not only do I like this kid so much, I wish he was my own son, because I think that highly of him. But he's 20 years old. He didn't have a high school diploma. He dropped out of high school, and he was hired by JP Morgan Chase after our program as a cloud architect. That shows you how little employers care about formal education. They care about what you can do for them. So no, you don't need a degree. I can give you a tremendous number of examples of people we've gotten hired without degrees. Here we got somebody a job, and a big job, that didn't even have a high school diploma. I only say that to prove the point.
Right. Let me get this link. All right. So, no, you do not need a college degree. How long does the program take? Let's answer that one, and then we'll wrap it up.
Until you're hired. You stay in our program until you are hired. Now, I know that's going to sound crazy, but me and Chris and Alonzo and the rest of our team, we're obsessed with building your career. Now, I'll tell you, on average, it takes about 8 to 12 months to get you hired. In today's economy, it might take 9 months or 10 months, which is a little longer, but we're still getting people hired every day. We got somebody hired in South Africa today. We had 2 or 3 people hired just last week. But you're in our program until you are hired. That's our guarantee to you. If you don't quit on you, we won't quit on you. You can stay in the live classes for a full year. You'll have access to the Slack community and all the videos as long as you need them. All I care is that you get hired. We're obsessed about it.
All right. So that was a great show. Alonzo, you got anything to share with us before we wrap it up with Mike?
Yeah, I hope everyone was edified with all this information that we shared about the differences between an engineer and architecture and what to expect, what the world is like, the 10,000-foot view versus you're looking at the molecular structure of a construct. And architecture is kind of like Jenga. You got to be careful which threads you want to pull versus, you got to look at the overall architecture versus looking at that tiny little fine piece, but you don't see how it's going to affect everything else. But overall, I hope everyone enjoyed it. I did too, always coming here and Head in the Clouds and definitely looking forward to the next one. What about you, Mike?
I was thrilled to have a discussion with you. I always loved this. I love shaping the future tech minds and the future tech leaders. When I left internal medicine for tech, I got to tell you, it was the best thing I ever did. I like taking care of sick people. I did. But it was work. I got home and I was tired. The second I found myself in my first architect job, wow, it was just paradise. I got to meet people. I got to improve their businesses. I learned about life. I learned about leadership. I learned about business. I got to travel the world where somebody else paid for it. I got to go to the finest restaurants where somebody else paid for it. Got to become an expert connoisseur in wine and scotch, because when you're entertaining clients, you have to learn about this because you're going to be going there. I got to learn how to play golf because it was part of the cloud architect job and the enterprise architect job to do it. And I met people all over the world. I met people in England, Australia, South America, Central America, all over Europe, the Middle East, Asia. And let me tell you, it was so wonderful to meet so many wonderful people. And now I may not be an architect of other people's businesses anymore. I architect people's tech careers. And guess what? Every day I get to speak. Today I spoke with people in Lagos, Nigeria, Cape Town, South Africa, Johannesburg, Cameroon, England, all over Europe. Spoke to somebody in Colombia today. Spoke to somebody in Brazil today. Spoke to many people in Canada today, the US. It doesn't get any better than that.
All right. So a couple of things I just want to remind everybody about. We've got the webinar. Got the banner up there. Tyrone put the link there in the chat box. We've got that webinar. That will be this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, where you can learn all about how we help you become the ultimate cloud architect. Also, take advantage of our 2-for-1 Memorial Day special. It's been extended through Friday. Take advantage of this. And if you enroll in the award-winning Cloud Architect Career Development Program, you will also get free access to the Tech Interview Fundamentals to help you land that ultimate cloud architect job. Enroll now, and you can watch the recording of Mike's class on the basic 3-tier architecture from this morning. Enroll now, and you can join Mike's class on securing your environments and securing large and small and complex and simple environments. Similarities, differences, whatever you want to do. He'll be doing that on Thursday. Enroll now, and you can join Alonzo's class on Friday about your branding and positioning so that you can get that ultimate cloud architect job. Join now, and you can watch the over 500 hours worth of content available to you. Probably won't be able to finish it before class on Thursday, but you can try. Join now, and you can be a part of this amazing community that we have here. Richard asked, what is the last salary estimates for cloud architects, Alonzo? We will close out with that.
Okay, well, let's get it going. I believe
Richard knows that you do that every day.
Richard does know you do that every day.
I have found out that I gotta. Okay,
it's their motivation.
So you look that up while we're at it. Richard is one of the most amazing people. Everything from being a TV host to running this company. The only thing I don't think he's ever been was a prime minister or president. And I'm waiting for him to tell me that he was secretly a prime minister one day too.
Okay. We are on the way. Everything is just a little slow, but I am almost there.
It's all those people moving to Texas. Same problem down here in Florida, trust me.
Yes.
My internet's going crazy.
Okay. So the current cloud architect position with all years of experience over all industries with confidence is $200,961.
Oh, it went down $14.
Oh man, yeah, it's gonna kill us.
Oh, but it has gone up, I think, almost 10% since the beginning of the year.
It has, yes.
So yeah, that is great information, and that's a great way to end the show. We will see all of you if you're our students. I know many of you are. We will see you in class on Thursday. If you're not our students, we'll see you on the webinar on Thursday. And if you want to join the webinar and then enroll and join the class on Thursday, you're more than welcome to. Have a great day, everybody.
Awesome. It's a pleasure. Next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.